When you picture France, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's that postcard image, right? Luxury brands, charming cafes, that famous 35-hour work week. It's a powerful, romantic fantasy. But what if I told you that behind that beautiful curtain, there's a much darker economic reality unfolding? Well, let's pull it back. Because here's the thing, when you look past that fantasy, the reality is pretty stark. We're talking about a country that's drowning in debt, stuck in economic stagnation, and experiencing this quiet, creeping decline that's hollowing out its entire middle class. To put it bluntly, France is politely and steadily going broke. So in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to deconstruct this myth of a wealthy superpower. We're going to look at the hard numbers and the deep structural problems hiding behind that beautiful postcard. You know, the source material I'm drawing from puts it just perfectly with this one line that gets right to the heart of the matter. The culture is as rich as ever, but the country's balance sheet? It's downright frightening. First up, let's talk about the squeeze on the middle class. And to do that, we have to understand a phenomenon with a very particular name, the Smikodization of the French soul. So what on earth is Smikodization? Well, the SMIC is just the French term for minimum wage. And for years, what's been happening is that the minimum wage keeps going up to fight inflation, but the median salary, it barely budges. The result is this massive flattening, this compression, where the financial reward for getting an education, for gaining skills and experience, just gets squeezed into almost nothing. And this chart right here really makes the problem crystal clear. Just look at that tiny gap. After all those years of school, of working your way up, a median salary worker in France takes home less than 550 euros more per month than someone just starting out on minimum wage. Why would you work harder? Where's the incentive to take on more responsibility? It's been absolutely crushed. And we're not talking about some small niche problem. This affects a huge chunk of the population. Over 17% of the entire workforce is now earning the minimum wage, and millions more are just barely above it. The economy starts to feel less like a ladder you can climb and more like a participation trophy for just showing up. And on top of all that, you have what the source material graphically calls the tax murder scene. So let's just follow the money for a second. A company wants to hire you and budgets, say, 60,000 euros for the role. Great. But hold on, after the company pays its share of social charges, your gross salary on the contract is already down to 43,000. Then, after your own employee contributions are taken out, you're down to 33,000, and you still haven't even paid income tax on that yet. The result of this entire system is pretty staggering. France has the single highest tax burden of all developed nations. By the time any money actually makes it into an employee's bank account, nearly half of what the employer originally paid has just vanished into the system. It's like an economic boa constrictor, just slowly squeezing the life out of the private sector. So if that's what's happening to the individual, how does this affect the country as a whole? Well, you get what you see here. A nation completely running on fumes, bogged down by debt, de-industrialization, and a system that just feels broken. You see, for decades, France basically made a big bet. It bet on becoming what's called a post-industrial museum economy, focusing on tourism, luxury, and services. And this slide shows you the result of that bet. While manufacturing is still an absolute powerhouse next door in Germany, in France, it has just withered away. It's now barely 10% of the economy. They just stopped making things. And the consequence isn't just an economic number, it's deeply social. When you lose factories, you lose the good, high-paying jobs that hold entire towns together. This created the ghost towns that fueled the political rage of movements like the Yellow Vests. These are the people who are left behind by the museum economy. At the very same time, the French state has been spending money like there's no tomorrow. Public debt has absolutely exploded to 113% of GDP. Now, to put that into perspective, the official EU limit that all countries are supposed to follow is 60%. France isn't just breaking the rule, it has completely shattered it. And let me be clear, this isn't some recent crisis from the pandemic or a war. This slide shows a half-century of addiction to spending, from governments on the left and the right. France has not passed a single balanced budget since 1974. 50 straight years. And now the bill is finally coming due. The interest payments alone, just the interest on the debt, will soon cost more than the country's entire education budget. Think about that. So what happens when you combine stagnant wages, crushing taxes, and a state drowning in debt? Well, you get an exodus of ambition. The country starts to lose its most valuable resource, its best, brightest, and most talented people. This quote from the source material just sums up the brutal choice facing France's best and brightest so perfectly. This system puts a ceiling on your ambition, and if you really want to break through it, the only way is to leave. The reasons are this perfect storm of everything we've been talking about. It's the insane taxes, the low take-home pay, but it's also cultural. It's a rigid corporate culture that's hard to climb, a strange cultural allergy to wealth where success is often seen with suspicion, and, well, the simple fact that there are way better opportunities in London, Zurich, or Silicon Valley. And this is the ultimate economic tragedy of the brain drain. The French taxpayer shells out a ton of money for an excellent, expensive education system that produces world-class engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. But then, other countries get to profit from their talent, from their companies, and from their tax dollars. It's a massive, self-inflicted wound. Okay, this all brings us to our final and maybe most important section: why France isn't just a French problem. Why it's actually a warning to the rest of the West. The argument is that it's the canary in the global coal mine. This is the crucial takeaway. France isn't some bizarre exception to the rule. No, it's just further down the road that a lot of other developed countries are already traveling on. In a way, it's a time machine, giving all of us a sneak peek at a possible future. Because the symptoms of this French disease, if you want to call it that, are incredibly contagious. They exist almost everywhere. An aging population, the hollowing out of your manufacturing base, a deep, deep addiction to public debt, and the extreme political polarization that always follows when the economic pie stops growing. Does any of that sound familiar? And this leads to the ultimate betrayal. The social contract just breaks. For decades, the deal in France was simple. You pay the highest taxes in the world, and in return, you get the best public services in the world. Well, that deal is now officially void. The French are still paying luxury, 5-star prices and taxes, but now they're getting budget-level services in crumbling hospitals, schools, and court systems. So we're left with this final, really provocative question. The postcard of France is still beautiful, for sure, but the economic reality underneath is a powerful, powerful warning. If France really is a time machine, showing what happens when all these trends reach their logical conclusion, the most important question we have to ask ourselves is this: is my country next?